Welcome to Mná Feasa, a podcast series featuring stories from older women in County Kilkenny. Produced by me, Helena Byrne, in collaboration with Kilkenny County Council Library Services and Kilkenny Heritage. In episode 2, we hear from local older women across the county of Kilkenny about their school days. How different was the education system then to how children of Kilkenny might experience it now? What are their feelings towards Peig Sayers? And did they really have to walk miles to get to school?
We went to school in the local school here in Ballyhale, and we walked down the road, and then we came in through the Mass Path. Well, it's called the Mass Path now, but we always refer to it as the Gardens. There was a Mass Path down, and we walked across. We came down here and across this way. There's a path, and it comes out at the priest's house.
Yes,
and the doctors.
By the doctors.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's now known as the Mass Path, but to us it was always the Gardens.
The Gardens,
yeah,
okay.
Because seemingly there was a big estate house in Ballyhale, and all these fields were part of the estate, and they were known as the Gardens.
Oh,
yeah,
right, okay.
Yeah. I'm going back hundreds, probably years now.
Yeah.
We always knew it as the Gardens, so we came, and the Reeds came down from the top road. The Reeds, the Corcorans, us, and the Knoxes. We all went down to school this way and across, and came back up. And there was a big hill for the Reeds to go. They had to cross the railway line and go back up along the hill. Oh, there was Hawes up there as well.
So a throng of you would be coming down this way.
Yeah,
every
there'd be a
morning.
good few was now. Yeah, and a good few was going back home. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was come hail, rain or shine. There was no cars or anything of that. Would you get a lift?
sometimes Eddie Corcoran gave us a lift on the tractor.
Okay.
He had a little bit of kind of a half timber trailer with no guards or anything on it, and we'd all sit up on this, and he'd drop us off, and well, his own lads then as well. There was 10 children in the Corcoran family, 3 girls and 7 boys in their house. They all went down to school this way as well.
So we had a long lane, so I walked 1.25 miles to school every day. God. And when I was in first baby infants, I suppose, I got the first walked up with my brothers and sister, and then from there on I walked home on my own. But I can still remember one evening, I know exactly where I was when they found me. I'd fallen asleep in the ditch because I was tired coming home. And the rest of them picked me up on the way down at 3:00. I'd left at 2.
And you grew up in Kilkenny?
In Kilkenny, born and bred. I always say to people I'm a cat through and through.
In every which way.
The original.
So you were sent to the John of God?
Yes.
Right.
And I always regretted that I didn't go to the Lake School, St. John's. They called it the Lake because it was, I don't know why it was called the Lake. I think it was because it was near the river or something. And I'd love to have gone there because it was so near home. But as I say, it was like a million miles away when you're a child, going across town. And there weren't cars like there are now.
Yeah.
And that would have been sort of during the war when petrol would have been scarce and there wouldn't have been many cars anyway.
Right.
So
you'd be lucky to get, even if you were lucky enough to have a car, then you'd be lucky to get the petrol to go with it.
Yeah. But I always remember making my first Holy Communion, and I'd love to have made it in my own parish. And because it was, like as I said, at that time it was all different, and I made it in Patrick's parish.
And at school, did you have a favourite subject?
I loved cookery. And we used to have laundry. Now people find that awfully funny.
Laundry?
Yes.
As a subject?
As well.
Sort of like home economics or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was because maybe, I don't know.
That was in primary school.
In primary school, yeah. But all the schools didn't have it. I think it was just maybe filling in time or something with the nuns. I don't know.
Interesting.
And growing up in Freshford, I went to the infant school first. Didn't want to go because I was a mammy's pet. And I remember, I can still see it this very day. It was a lovely sunny morning, and I said, I don't want to go to school. I said, you're going. My mother was a very determined woman. And off I went, and the Odeon Cinema was down the road from us, which was great. I spent a lot of time in the Odeon. And I remember hanging on to the doors and I wouldn't let go. And she bet me off the doors and dragged me down anyway. They were all gone in. And Miss Cody, Phyllis Cody, was the infant school teacher. And Mrs. Carroll taught the older children in the other room. And I was crying and she came out to me. She said, "Oh, what are you crying for, Elizabeth?" I was called Elizabeth then, you know. And I was saying, "I don't want to go in because I'm afraid." And she said, "But Teresa is here and she lives next door to you. Come on in." And then I went and I can still see there was a lattice windows, you know, and she let me sit beside Teresa, who was my friend, neighbours, you know, and I kind of said, "Oh, not too bad really," and looking around at all the stuff on the walls and all the, you know, pictures and the ABCs and all this, and I said, "Oh, not too bad, I will settle down anyway." And then she started singing songs for us, and I remember her, "Dilly sit out, yeah, and getting to learn that song, you know. And then in the winter, I went every day then, not a bother. Never cried a tear, never hardly missed a day, you know. And I remember when the winter had come, she'd put us all around. We had a little black stove, like the stoves you buy now. Anyway, yeah, you had your jam sandwich and a bottle of milk, a YR sauce bottle, you know. Yeah. And she'd take all the milk from us and take off the tops and put it on the heater and let it heat up, and there'd be a little skin on the top, and we used to love that. And then we all sit down and have our lunch.
I didn't really mind school. I didn't really mind it. I prefer to have been at home, fooling around at home. But we knew it was a necessary evil.
Right.
That's the way I'd put it.
Yeah.
And there was only a 2-teacher school then. Mr. O'Neill, Padder O'Neill, lived in the house beside the school. That was his house.
Okay.
That was the master's house, they used to call it.
Right.
No, the school was the original building there. It was only, I think there was only 2 classrooms and dry toilets.
Oh,
yeah,
toilets,
yeah, dry
right.
toilets. Yeah.
Good.
No flush, no water.
Heating? Was there heating?
Heating, there was a coal, he had a fire
Okay.
right beside his desk.
Right. Right beside his desk.
Yeah. So that, you know how far now an open fire came in a big room.
Yeah.
But I don't remember feeling cold. I think he had 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. So there was only seating for 2 classes. So the others had to stand all around.
Really?
Yeah. He had all those pupils. And then the Sheenshire and the Shanore. Sheenshire must have been the juniors. We'd have to take turns sitting down, doing your writing part. Took a bit of organisation. It was only when you'd look back on it now.
My grandmother was a teacher.
Okay.
And when she started teaching, the junior assistant mistresses, they used to call them, she used to walk to Bennisbridge every day and home again.
How far a distance was that?
5 miles out and 5 miles back.
Oh my God. Going to school, and you know, we talked about you went to the John of God. What was school like?
Some of the nuns were lovely. Some of them were very strict. Okay. Very strict.
This is the general consensus.
And they all had their
honest.
slappers. When I think of it.
Were you well behaved at school?
Well, I never got into too much trouble.
Right.
I wasn't brilliant in school, I can tell you. But like that again, now my grandmother would always hear your spellings, or, you know, and you didn't know them, you'd have to keep going over them till you kind of passed muster with her. But the one thing in Donegal, you see, they always had, for after Corpus Christi, they had the 40 hours that have exposition, you see, and they had processions. And I was never in the processions because it was too early in the morning, you see.
Oh, so it'd be the start of the day.
Yeah, it'd be 8 o'clock, and we didn't have a car.
And you had the big long walk to get to school.
Absolutely, we didn't have a car, so I mean, you didn't get over till, you know, you went to school. You walked over, but sure, look.
Yeah. But as I got older, then I graduated up to the big school, you know, the girls' primary. And the girls' school was this side and the boys was here. And we had 2 female teachers, Miss Mara and Miss Alice Riley. And she was from Cavan, Miss Riley. And I used to have her, you know. And she spoke in Irish a lot. So I was never Elizabeth, I was Eilish my whole life going there.
right.
And if you were bold, you were called Colleen Donna. And then if she was really mad at you, she'd call you a stupid idiot if you didn't know something. You know, they were very tough. So you couldn't slouch, you had to stand up straight. And you had to walk in a line in the school. And there was big benches, they weren't separate like in the schools now. So if you were the older class in fourth, you know, she'd make you stand on the back and then say the third classes sit down in front. And then she might walk behind, you know, and she'd have the ruler going. And you know, like you may stand there for an hour and you might put down your knee a bit because you'd be getting tired. And I was always kind of tallish, very thin and very tall. And I might put down, and she, did somebody put down their knee? If I catch anyone with their knee, and I'll be sorry.
I suppose, Helena, I could say, as I told you, I went to school in Big Wood, a very small, rural, and I was 12 when I done my primary cert, which is, whatever you call it now, it don't exist anymore, does it? Primary cert, you did it in 6th class.
No, it doesn't.
So then I was only 12, and this first cousin of mine, I advised my mother to send me down to Ram's Grange. It was a national school run by the St. Louis nuns, and I stayed with my aunt. And I went down there, and I went down for a year, but I was so handy. They kept me for 2 years, and I used to go out in the field, and I'd see Tory Hill, which would be across from my home place in Glenmore, and I used to cry outside in the field. There were no phones, no connection for anything, you know what I'm saying. And I was only 12 and 13 years of age.
So you could have been as good as a million miles away.
Yes. And then my cousin that was teaching, she said to my mother, you should put me into the Mercy in New Ross, which is all through Irish.
Oh.
Yes, and my teacher that was in Big Wood used to take the roll call when I came to say 4th, 5th, 6th class. He'd take the roll call in the morning, and there was a pub in Big Wood 5 minutes down the road, and he'd go to the pub. We'd be all there, and he might come back at 12 o'clock. And that was our teaching. So I was put into this Mercy convent, everything to Irish, and I spent 2 years there, and then I went to the Mercy in Carrick, which was all through Irish as well, but it was a nicer school, and then I done my junior cert there.
Actually, that's something I'd love to know, actually, from each of you. I mean, Irish was driven into you.
Yeah.
And, I mean, poor old Peig Sayers.
Well,
she was really... Did any of you have...
I did. I think many of us had Peig Sayers. She had died in 1953, so she came on the syllabus 70th. I did the leave in 73, and just Peig Sayers. It took me until 45 years later when I went to the Blasket Island to see the poverty and the hardship. She was illiterate.
Yeah.
She dictated that Mushkale Fame to her son, who in turn shared it with a teacher whose wife was a kicker, an inspector. And they took out the fun bits.
That's what I've
heard.
The
bits that she was a folklorist, a local lovely woman who entertained the entire Blasket Island. I hated it. I mean, her children died. One of them actually did fall off the cliff. Naturally, you could see it. How it could happen? And I mean, they had nothing over there. They were living, but she was the hub of the centre, and she was the writer. But she never wrote. She wasn't from the Blasket. She was from Dunquin. She came there when she got married and learned. She wasn't her spoken language. English was her first language.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were trying to honour her memory by doing this for Leaving Cert at the time. And to be honest, it was...
It did so much damage to her reputation.
Well, it damaged a lot of her reputation in that it was dreary and it turned a lot of children off Irish. It was how it was taught also.
You know, Irish, as it was taught in the schools, was very much almost a language it was from Kerry or from Galway. It wasn't from us, you know. Whereas to go back to the 1901 census and to find that my great-grandmother had signed herself, you know, head of the household, her husband was dead. He died tragically very young in the first year of marriage, but she signed herself. She had Irish and English, and that was such a point for me to know that she was an Irish speaker, because she was born in the 1830s, so she grew up with the Irish language, you know. That was just really important for me to kind of place the language here in Kilkenny.
And when you were in secondary school then, did you have a plan? Did you know what you wanted to do when you grew up?
I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I never wanted to do any more exams.
Okay.
I knew had this fear. I used to get really anxious coming up for exams, and I never really did as well as I should have had, because I was so, when I look back on it, and there was no one to tell you, well, calm down or take it easy, or you know, you wanted to do well.
No sort of,
you wanted to do well, but your mind, your brain, when I'd look back on it, I was exhausted when it came to exam days from worrying about it, and do you know, that kind of way. And there was no one to
Nobody
advise you.
with anxiety.
No, it wasn't a word that's even mentioned, I'd say.
I actually liked boarding school myself. Yeah. Now, granted, when you go away, I mean, you'd miss Mammy and Daddy, and you'd miss home, you know. Yeah. But it was a lovely college, I have to say, really and truly. But look, when we went to boarding school, you hadn't visited every Sunday. You only had visiting once a month. And Mammy might get up maybe 1 month. Next month she mightn't get up. But it never really bothered me. Do you know? Right. If she didn't get up, I'd always have a tuck box. There'd be a parcel sent to me on the Sundays that she couldn't come. Because she'd have to get somebody to drive her to Mount Mellick, you know. So it wasn't always that easy, you know. And like once I went in September, I was there until there was no Halloween holidays or anything like that. Them times you were there until Christmas.
It's incredible to think of now because, you know, you'd be coming home and you would have grown since your parents saw you last. Like, know.
And the one thing that sticks out in my mind is, like when I came back home, our house looked so small. It was like a little doll's house. But I often have said, what did they do to the house to so small, you know? But it's because you're living in a big complex, you know, for so long. You come home then in your own houses. And then you get used to it after a few days again, to be back to kind of nearly normality in your head again, you know. Yeah. But that's just always coming into the yard and say, oh, God, just the house was it looked so small, you know. It's just a kind of a visual thing. But it was, you know. And once you've been there for a couple of days, you kind of back to normality again, you know. Yeah. You know, and then, but it always happened. It never went away. Once you go back to school, come back home, the same thing would happen again. You know, amazing, yeah.
It's almost like you developed as a person, and your world expanded, and literally it felt as if your house, your home house had shrunk in the meantime.
Had shrunk in the meantime, it was, I suppose, really true. I never minded being in school because I love sport. So I played camogie. So that kind of really helped, you know. And we had a fabulous teacher, a nun actually, Sister Columbia was her name. She used to do the camogie with us, and she was lovely. And maybe there was a little bit of leniency when you're a camogie player. I don't know, really. A little bit of favouritism. I don't know. I think it was the marrying year. Was that 68, 69, the marrying year? When I went into it, I think it was the marrying year. And then it became co-ed.
Oh,
right. So there were boys and girls mixed in the school.
Okay.
Yeah. And they were really great. They were lovely, lovely chaps. Every one of them was really lovely. Now, was there any dating? Not really. But there wouldn't be a full class of boys then. There might be only 5 in the classroom, you know.
Right.
And there might be only 3 and more. But it was lovely. It was really, I had great memories. And there was I was only talking about this the other day actually to one of the girls, my daughters, Sister Borges. She would have been down from Wexford, and she was brilliant. She was so good to us. She used to do the night study, you know, and we had big windows around the classroom, and she'd peep in, you'd see that nigh the hedge, and if you were stuck to do anything, maths or anything like that, you just beckon at her to come in. She'd sit down among 7 or 8 of us, and she'd do the maths with us for the next day.
Oh, right.
Brilliant. It was lovely. I have to say, I had a lovely childhood, really.
Yeah.
You know.
It sounds fabulous.
Yeah, it was good, Helena. Yeah. Now it was, really. Yeah,
right.
It was lovely.
Yeah.
Of course, there was no free education. All of us had to be paid for, and we went to Well, I got a scholarship. I had to try it twice, but I tell you, my mother was very insistent. If I didn't get it the first time, I better get it the second time. But her comment about my father, himself was hugely interested in literature and wrote himself. He was a poet and all the rest of it. But she said, I asked her about the expense of us all, and she said, he never questioned me spending the money on basically on your education, you know. I think just in terms of the influence of, I was the youngest, so I would credit the influence of older sisters and what they were doing hugely, particularly my sister Eileen, because she went for teacher training, but then she wasn't quite satisfied with teacher training. She went and did a degree in her own time, you know, and it was offered to me that this is what you could do, you know, you could go to college.
Mná Feasa is a podcast series featuring stories from older women in County Kilkenny. Produced by me, Helena Byrne, in collaboration with Kilkenny County Council Library Services and Kilkenny Heritage. This collaboration is kindly funded by commemorative initiatives under the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media. To find out more, visit helenabyrne.com.